Do I support or oppose the organized Christian church? I am a supporter of the organized Christian church. I speak against today's modern church a lot, culture, and they're not all the same. First of all, but there is a problem in our country with everybody being against the freedom of speech. And when I say everybody, I mean I've been all over the place in the streets. The gangs don't let you have freedom of speech. Homeless people don't let you have the freedom of speech. Churches mostly won't let you have the freedom of speech. Schools mostly don't let you have the freedom of speech. I'll say mostly. And families mostly don't let people have the freedom of speech when it comes to religion and politics. The news media limits your freedom of speech. If you speak against a false religion, that's where they draw the line. You can't tell the facts about religion, so you don't really have the freedom of speech. And the truth is, you should have freedom of religion, not freedom of false religion. And that's what it is. It's not the freedom of religion doesn't mean you're, hey, all false religions come here. This is the place for all of the false religions to come to. It doesn't mean that. It means it's the freedom to, obviously, the freedom of speech is so you can find the truth and find peace. And there's no peace in lies and chaos. And so you have the freedom of speech to seek it out and find the evidence and all those kind of things. And it's not supposed to be offensive because there is clear evidence that there's only one proven God. That's as easy as 1 + 1 = 2 if you're allowed to talk about it. And it can clearly be seen. And I believe that the false religions, the clear false religions, as organized religions, should be outlawed. If you want to talk about them, and you should be able to talk about them. And so that's the freedom of religion to study religion, the freedom to study religion. But the freedom of religion is the freedom of a real religion, not a false religion, not a freedom of McDonald's. We have the freedom of McDonald's, but not the freedom of false advertisement, saying you're McDonald's when you're making something else. And it's not hamburger meat. It's not beef that they're cooking. And you claim it is beef. You don't have the freedom to do that if you're caught doing it. And so the freedom of speech helps us find out, seek out the truth, seek out what's real, give each other evidence. And so it exposes what's false. And so Jesus exposed what's true and false. He rose from the dead. A religion, just obvious sense, and I don't use the word common sense a lot, as when I wrote my books, Reality Harmonizer Bob books, I came up with the word obvious sense. But there is obvious sense in reality, obvious sense. It's obvious that there is no religion in the world that gave us evidence of a second life like Jesus did. And when Jesus came and did that, it was like game, set, match, checkmate, checkmate. If anybody who's educated, even if you want to say all religions are fairy tales, all of them, that's the only fairy tale, supposed fairy tale, that shows evidence of a second life and power over life and death and complete true love and forgiveness on the cross. There's way too much evidence that shows it's not a fairy tale for anybody to prove. They can't prove it's not a fairy tale. It's way more provable that it's real and not a fairy tale than it is that it isn't, right? And so, because you had the 33 years on earth, you had the virgin birth, you had Mary still standing at the cross, you had Jesus show his hands to doubting Thomas, you had Jesus referring to Moses and other people in the Old Testament. He referred to the 10 Commandments, and the top 2 commandments are love God and love neighbor. He did those teachings, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all wrote them down as witnesses, key witnesses who traveled with him. That's the right people, so that there's evidence that the right books of the Bible came together. There's evidence, there's an inference from me that the Roman Catholicism, it comes from Rome. They had the Roman soldiers. They're the ones that guarded the grave. They had the strongest army in the world, and he escaped that grave. And that's why I think people say, well, Catholics left certain things out of the Bible. They're the ones that had a hand in that way back. Well, and so I hear that, and then I think, well, the reason they didn't change it and put the Pope in the Bible. They did put the books that make sense in there. If they helped influence that, King James, maybe. I don't know who. But so there's things, there's a lot to it. So there's a lot of questions and here's and there. But the biggest, I'm going to fast forward. The biggest thing today, the subject I talk about a lot, and I'm not going to get stuck on it here, I promise. I'm almost positive this time I won't make any explanations. But to support my point, and that's where I usually get caught. But the biggest problem we have today is where people lied, and the Democrat Party lied about the KKK and white supremacy coming from Christianity, and they try to call Christianity the founding of America white supremacist. And they pin that on the Republicans. So the Republicans are the Christian side, and they're the ones that ended slavery, and the Democrats are the ones that fought to keep it. And so now they're trying to twist it, make it look like the Republicans are patriotic because of slavery. They're patriotic because they ended slavery. They're patriotic because they had the freedom of religion. They're patriotic because we can have one nation under God. They're the ones that pushed for that and kept that. The Democrats come from the British side, the government side of that came here to stop people from being free to do those things. And so anyway, but that's not the subject I get stuck on. So to fast forward that foundation, and when you ended slavery, when Abraham Lincoln, Christian Republican President Abraham Lincoln, ended slavery, he basically was saying, he kind of put a stamp on capitalism by saying everybody should get paid for their labor. So if we get rid of capitalism where people get paid for their labor, what's left? Slavery, So in my view, we still have slavery. So this is where it's hard. I can't find a church that lets me speak. It's not just a church. I've been to a lot of churches. I've visited a lot of churches, and I've studied a lot of churches, but they're influenced, they're oppressed by the Democrat Party as part of it. So churches generally have a tax-free thing, and so that the Democrats hear them talking politics, they want to start taxing them and stuff, and so there's a lot of political pressure from the Democrat side to harm churches if they exercise the freedom of speech, and so that's why some of them don't, and they should anyway, though. From that standpoint, they should anyway, but you should be careful about it. They should talk amongst themselves at least. They should be able to educate each other. But then, so there's some bewitching, though, that goes on in a lot of churches where they say, don't watch the news. Don't be scared to watch the news. You should keep up with the news. And then people who have a passion for it and a talent for it should get into the debates and put good words in there. And so there's no... so there is wisdom in the debates, brought to the debates, so a lot of people in media don't do it, and some of them are fake. You got the Pharisees, you got all that, and that's always existed. Jesus spoke against the Pharisees, and a lot of churches are Pharisee, and so they talk about holiness all the time. So I disagree with some of the holiness teaching in churches, but today, and I think there's a big divide to where they make you be so holy that you can't even relate to the world, and you can't even share Jesus with the world. And so it's I'm not going to be hamstrung or in a stalemate, put in a stalemate by people in churches. I stay away from people in churches who say not to talk politics. That's me. But and I don't like them trying to steal my time. I've had people try to steal my time, keep me busy just so I can't talk. Call me lazy, this or that, and I'm like, man, trying to make me prove. I've had people make me work for free and prove I'm a good worker. I'm not lazy. I've had all kinds of stuff, right? Or people say that I should work for free in the church. Now I've had people outside the church would do this, Democrat. And I've had people in churches say I should work for free because I believe in Jesus and shouldn't care about money, And so that people take advantage of that too. So and then there's time I voluntarily work for free as a charity. I've done that. Plus, I'm doing this for free, what I'm doing now. And I prefer to do it that way because when you accept money from people, then you have to follow their rules a lot of times. Or you got to wait for a paycheck. You got to sign up. You can't be a freelance worker a lot of times. So I prefer to have my freedom to just hear from the Holy Spirit, hear from God, or whatever He brings to my mind, or whatever just comes to my mind in the search of truth, and my physical memory, my physical development from seeking out a good vision and hoping to relay to the world the peaceable things I've learned. I have a lot of peaceable traits and I've had a lot of character traits that I've exercised from a young age, luckily, so I grew up in a good place. So that taught me a lot of good stuff. But also, I grew up in a good place that I've seen where people fall for easy tricks, and there's misconceptions that happen. So I grew up in a Christian background, Christian biblical background, but you still have to wonder if some people from that Christian background are true Christians, or did they fall for all the rules and things that kept them safe so they could build their kingdom on earth instead of in heaven, right? So that happens, and then they become traditional oriented. And then there's people I've met in those backgrounds that if you don't stick to a little tradition, it can come down to a small thing as how to cook a meal. No, you can only. I've seen people with that kind of thinking. They get you could call it legalism or Phariseeism, that they're so influenced by it. Doesn't mean they're a Pharisee at heart necessarily, but there's a lot of people who are so influenced by rules and keeping the rules, that they've kept all the preference rules of traditions that are not even relevant to the Ten Commandment rules, which are the basic ones. And you can make your own rules on your individual life. There's a lot of different ways to cook something, but I've seen people so brainwashed by keeping the rules, that they'll think it's a sin to cook a dish a different way than a cookbook says, or something like that. I've seen stuff that far fetched, and so that sometimes has to do. So you have to be considerate and all this when you see something like that. I do. I mean, you don't have to, but I do, and I understand that's also because you just can't remember other ways to do it. You don't want to mess it up, and you want to follow some directions, and don't realize the main way to. By the way, the main thing, I'm into nutrition. The main thing that matters when you cook some stuff like a vegetable is to just bring it to a slight boil to sterilize it if you want to. You can do it raw, rinse it real good. But if you want to do it slightly cooked, you just bring it to a boil and take it right back down right away. That's probably the best way to do it, with some salt. Add some salt. It's not going to taste good without salt. That's all you need. You don't even have to have the butter. You don't have to. Why would you add pork? A lot of people add pork to what do you call it? Can't think right now. Not cabbage. Anyway, I forgot. But they add pork, maybe to cabbage too. But these vegetables are for lowering your cholesterol, and then so you're going to mix it with pork. That is something that raises your cholesterol. So what's the point? It's for flavor. But if you're trying to be healthy, don't go add pork to it. If you're trying to lower your cholesterol, you just learn how to eat it and see if you like the taste plain. All right. Anyhow, so I think you're better off doing butter than pork even. So, because it's probably more of a natural. They talk about some cholesterols and fats being bad, but it's probably got some good cholesterol features to it. Anyway, but and they find out a lot of times, this cholesterol we thought was bad for you is pretty good for you as long as you don't do too much of it. So, anyway, but you can do a vegetable with just salt and water. If you want, you can do it without. You can do it raw. You get minerals, you get enzymes if you do it raw. If you don't, and you still might have some enzymes left if you don't bring it quite to a boil, and if you just want to sterilize it a little bit. And but if you cook it all the way, there's benefits to that too. You may kill the enzymes, which enzymes help digest things and break them down. They do special things. They help alleviate your pancreas from having to break things down. And you might lose a few minerals if you cook it all the way. But if you cook it all the way, you gain your body more easily absorbs some of the vitamins and I guess minerals. I forget. But generally, so there's things you absorb better. If you cook it to death, all the way to death, I guess you don't get much out of it. Maybe still some fiber. There's some taste. I don't like vegetables overcooked. But anyhow, so I mean, as far as sometimes it does help to look at the time, how much somebody's practiced and done it for a certain timing, but were they considering all those things I just mentioned when they made those rules? Sometimes not. But anyhow, so do I support the church? Okay, so the point I never got to when I explained the political side of things, how the church is attacked, is that what I didn't explain is, as far as my view, I do support the church still when I contest it, because I think they're wrong about, almost every church everywhere is wrong about medicinal science, and we'll summarize it to that. And that's the explanation I was meant that I would not get into, and I usually do, because it's a lot of explaining to do, and I usually don't even touch the surface. My memories, sometimes I'll get to one point and I'll forget the point I had 2 points ago. That's how my memory is. And I have so many subjects in mind. I'm playing catch up on all this stuff that I forget which subject I want to do today. So anyhow, but medicinal science is really non-existent to people in the church and our whole culture. So the drug cartels push, the church continues to believe drug cartels, and evolutionists, in my view, are the biggest influence who started the drug cartel thing. And they also demonize medicines. And then they also work through the Democrat Party to call Christianity racist. But the truth is, they're switching the blame because white supremacy and black supremacy comes from evolutionary beliefs, basically, where it believes in different races, and the Bible teaches one race. All right, so I am giving some explanation here as to how and why they demonized natural plant medicines and made them illegal, and then frankly dumped them in black neighborhoods. So so it seems racist when you pick on people who have had drug issues, and white neighborhoods have drugs too. Especially, I have a theory that says it seems to me that the evolutionists dumped crack. Well, they didn't dump crack cocaine because it wasn't there at first. It's a formula, but they put the formula in black neighborhoods, I think, at first. And that, take the powder, and they've taught the gang. What they did is they taught the gang culture through Hollywood and MTV or whatever back at first and stuff, and promoted and made it look sexy to be in a gang and all that kind of stuff. And they got all the pretty women dancing and everything else, right? To make it look like it's all about the money and all this. And you get the bling bling. All the beautiful women are out here. And then they like the tough guys and all this, right? So that talks young people into becoming part of that society and having power and stuff. And then also they teach hate, so they're blinded and not seeing the error of their ways. They teach hate for the laws against the drugs and against the police, actually. But really, it's the problem is you should want police to protect your property. That means I'm talking about gangs and everybody. You should want them to be a presence that protects you from being robbed and from being harmed physically, right? But when it comes to medicine and putting police in the middle of that, that's not the police's fault that they've done it. But some police fall for that. And I want to do a video about dirty cops. But some cops aren't necessarily dirty. They just believe in that drugs are evil, and they wanted to get into the force to help bust that. And that's the ones that seem dirty, and maybe their spirit is dirty to fall for that. Maybe, but it's tricky. It takes a long time of studying it and understanding it's not a fair thing. Our drug laws are not fair to the people who consume, who have been pre-exposed. It's like trying to tell somebody to quit drinking. If you ever drink coffee again, you're going to jail, or we're going to lock you up in a rehab. And then you lose all your stuff. You can't, because you're in a rehab, you can't pay your rent, your mortgage, or your tax, depending how long you're in or in jail for something like that. But it's actually, if you think about it, so I got stuck on this subject from another angle, sorry. But it's a different angle a little bit. So you got all this, you can see the domino effect. And I hear people from churches, they'll say, that's no excuse, no excuse, no excuse. As if it's the unpardonable sin to use medicine. And that you're supposed to be perfect all the way and Mr. Discipline, and that Christianity is all about being a soldier, like a Marine soldier or a top athlete, where you keep every little tiny rule, and if you ever break a rule, then you're less than. So these are appetite control management and all that stuff, and some people can learn how to use herbs in a way that helps them manage their appetite better. But usually the best way to do that is to stay off all herbs, but sometimes you have to wean off it. If people have been pre-exposed to coffee, I'm excluding coffee and chocolate, and I'm still battling that myself. I'm on and off it, but I've been off it enough times and had a few testers to where I may be finally convinced it's just not good for me to relapse on it. I might be able to eventually wean that completely out, and I'm getting closer to it, I think. But so I am stuck on this subject a little bit, but this is where I differ with the church, and they're really mean about this subject. Most of the church is very mean about this subject, but they believe in these rehabs. They believe in putting people in a prison-like rehab, and they believe in saying, once an addict, always an addict. They want to see you go through that and then saying, I've been clean for this long, and whatever, and all that. And the truth is, if you haven't been clean off of coffee and cigarettes in general, you haven't been clean off of drugs. And you could even get pickier and say if you haven't been clean off of Tylenol and aspirin. But those are clearly drugs that keep you from having fevers and can help help you not have blood clots. So I'm not going to pick on aspirin, but I am going to get pickier about staying off of Tylenol and ibuprofen and try to stick to the more natural things. And aspirin does come from a natural, I think the willow tree or bark. Let's see, tree bark or something. But it has one ingredient that's not the natural ingredient, but it comes from a natural ingredient. And so ibuprofen and Tylenol don't. That's something I'm going to study more and be more picky about, because we're finding out that the negativity of these other drugs. Now, some people are allergic to aspirin, and if you've had Reye's syndrome, you can't do aspirin. But for people who can, first of all, it's the only NSAID that doesn't cause a heart attack. But anything you take, if you take too much aspirin, you can have a stroke or something, because it's a blood thinner. So you don't want to take too much, and you don't want to take it on an empty stomach because it can eat a hole in your stomach. But it's still the healthiest one. So I would say aspirin, something I might not would come off all the way for too long, especially at my age, or if I think I have high cholesterol. I actually think, I'm not, the doctors will say, you can't say that, but this is speculation. You could speculate. We should have the freedom of speech to discuss this. If they think I'm wrong or I don't know enough, I'm not a doctor, you can't talk about this. Yes, I can. I should be able to. I mean, we have to share, right? So aspirin is, let's see, if you have high cholesterol, I would think aspirin helps some, right? It's a blood thinner. So if they give you, what do they want to give you for high cholesterol? Blood thinners, kind of? Or there's something that may do something a little different. But anyway, I don't know about that, all that. I just know I feel safer. I've had my cholesterol go up, and then I've brought it back down. But I felt pretty safer from having a heart attack with the aspirin, because it can help you prevent heart attacks. So, but then if I have high cholesterol, mainly I want to cut back on the sugar, cut back on the fats, try not to overeat, don't eat at night, keep more water in me, quit splurging on ice cream, get more exercise, right? But, but the point is, I do have, when you do chocolate and coffee, you have different withdrawals than you do from something like aspirin. And I'm going to have to go, I've run out of time, but, the churches don't know much about medicinal science because they're scared it promotes use of drugs. I think it's the other way around. I think if people learn the reality instead of say, look, they're okay, I don't believe these lies about everything, and we have safer medicines, it's a subject to talk about. We can't just let the evolutionists run all the medicinal science who they don't believe our neighbors, first of all, theoretically, and a lot of them haven't thought about it, and I'm not promoting hate for them, but they'll call it hate speech for me to talk about this, and that's baloney, because they're the ones promoting hate speech for people, trying to harm people and call them racist, and have them harmed, actually, by stereotyping them falsely, by the way, as racist if they believe in the Bible. And they're doing that because they hate America, too, for being a Christian nation. And they're the ones that the Christianity side, the true Christianity side, is the one that ended slavery. But I got to go.